And you will listen. You will listen.
Culture, good day, hello, culture, especially you to Seosamh O. You are all heartily welcome. Most of the children here all know me, so will you be quiet while I'm saying my few words? And I love all my friends that are here because you're so dear to me. Every one of you are my friends, and hello, darling. And it's very, very special. And I'm all nervous, but that's not. So you're here because of a particular individual called Caravaggio. And who was he? Well, he was a bit of a ruffian that lived over in Rome. And of course, I am in my business of art. I've studied the life story of Dalaigh, my namesake, which is Salvador Dalaigh, and I'm Seosamh O Dalaigh, and when it's translated, it's Joseph Daly and it's Salvador Dalaigh in Catalan. So we're connected with the Catalan painter Dalaigh. That's one of the works influenced by him. Then we have our friend Picasso up here. After a visit to his house, I went out and I got a little serviette like this, and I sat with my wife Nora in the coffee shop in Malaga, and that's the coffee shop serviette, and I did the drawing. And it went up into the painting there. So that's what happens when I'm away. Likewise with Caravaggio, I went down in 2008 to Rome, and I used my diary. I draw and write all my business into my books, and that of course is the drawing of Michelangelo and his wonderful door that he broke his back with. Here we have the first drawing for the painting that's here after Caravaggio, and it's in the San Luigi di Francisci church, and it was 1599 to 1600 this painting was painted. You'll see it in a minute. This one is my one, by the way, brought forward to 2012. But Caravaggio painted it in up to 1600, and it was hung in the French church known as San Luigi di Francisci, where he lived quite near himself, near the Pantheon, and it's full of all little alleyways and everything. But he was an absolute genius, this man was, an absolute genius. So that was the first quick pencil drawing. And the reason that I did that, I'll tell you why in a minute. This little piece of a story, I'm just going to read a short story for you. And it's dear to my heart because this is about the lost painting. The lost painting was the one found in Dublin in the Jesuits' house. And of course in whatever it was brought to the National Gallery, and everyone has been singing the praises of it since. It was originally thought to be painted by a fellow called Hornthurst, who was a copier. He was actually working in the style of Caravaggio at the time. But believe it or not, it was painted by a man called Michelangelo Merci de Caravaggio, who is the man we're talking about tonight. The lady I'm going to talk about here is a lady called Francesca Cappelletti, who is a teacher of art history in the University of Ferrara in Rome today. And back then she was only a young girl studying her art. And I have lots of information here about academics and geniuses that know all about these. I'm going to skip all that and give you the shortened version of it. But Francesca saw the work of Caravaggio for the first time when she was 11 years old. And it is within the Church of San Luigi di Francisci, which is a classical church. Because if you're interested in church at all, it doesn't matter whether it's a Protestant or Catholic or Jewish church, we visit them all. It's about going there for God or for your spirit, your soul, and be praying to your Maker. The Muslims do it all the time. We do it as well. But the Church of San Luigi di Francisci, and I'm just changing for a second here, has beautiful Latin Mass with the Gregorian chant and everything. It's wonderful stuff. And Nora and I went into the church, and like she'll tell you here in her book, this is back when she was in 1969 or something, so you can imagine she was a young girl. And just from a short distance from the Pias in Narbona, her father, an accountant who worked in the law office, used to take her and her two sisters in hand on Sunday afternoons, and the girls dressed in their church-going finery for excursions around Rome. They would set out to see the ancient rooms of the Forum, painting sculptures in one of the city's great galleries or churches. And it's only a short piece now. Francesca was the oldest of the three who made games of these excursions, trying to match the paintings with the artist before looking at the attributions. In time she came to know the names of the masters of the Italian Renaissance baroque, and the way that schoolboys know the names of the footballers and everything today. Her first encounter with Caravaggio, this is what I loved about this, was remained vivid in her mind. The three paintings known as the Matthew cycle, this is Saint Matthew we're talking about now, hung in the dim, shadowy regions of the church at the far end of the nave, in the recess known as the Contrelli Chapel. It smelled of candle smoke and incense. A pale light flickered in the chapel through the small lunette window, made nearly opaque by the dust and grime. In Caravaggio's day, the flickering light of candles would have illuminated the chapel. When Francesca was a girl, illuminations required a coin in the box. I had to put the coin in the box when Nora and I had finished at the Mass. And we went down through the nave, and inside was one of the 3 Caravaggios of Matthew. The paintings of Matthew. One was the Martyrdom of Matthew, which was a fantastic piece of work, but this one here is the Calling of Matthew. And she had to, the light suddenly, as if it were, wait till I just get to it, I've lost my power. She stood with her hand, why have I lost my, she stood with her hands on the smooth, cool marble railing, which I did as well, to try and draw, transfixed by the descriptions of Matthew's life. The most captivating to her was the one known as the Calling of Matthew, which I did as well. And I felt an affinity with this woman because of this. She, by the way, is the woman who researched the provenance of the painting of the lost painting, which was known as. It was also known as the Taking of Christ, which was found in the Jesuits above in Dublin. And here it is here, the Kiss, which was, the Kiss was the most important piece of that painting. It was Judas's kiss that Caravaggio captured so brilliantly to let us see that he was nailing Jesus. And I had written here the lost painting, the Taking of Christ it was known as. And this painting, she researched the provenance, and when I've written here, this girl did all that work going from Rome right through to the Mattei family and furthering onto their families to find where they went through old vaults and finally to Scotland, by the way, Mary, where it actually ended, was bought by a guy called William Hamilton Osborne, William Hamilton Nesbitt. It was called The Imprisonment of Christ, painted by the Dutch artist Gerard van Hornthorst in 1612 to 1620. Caravaggio, in fact, painted the said painting in 1602, called The Lost Painting. This painting was owned by a family called the Mattei family, which we visited their gallery in Rome. Beautiful place, and it was sold on. It was sold on to Hamilton, William Hamilton Nesbitt. But it would then, the earliest listings in Scotland was a catalogue of old masters and Scottish national portraits, published in 1884 in Edinburgh. The painting now called The Betrayal of Christ, done by Hornthorst, right? And this is useful information, but it's very important where I'm coming from, because this girl, Francesca, was researching all this for the national, eventually to prove a point. Edinburgh, the painting was now called, lent on exhibition by Miss Constance Nesbitt Hamilton Ogilvie, the last of the William Hamilton Nesbitt's direct heir. And the National Gallery of Scotland received the painting in 1912. And what happened? Dowell's auctioneers in Edinburgh auctioned the painting in 1921. The National Gallery let what was now to become the most valuable painting slip through their hands. Hugh Bridgestock, assistant keeper of the National Gallery, discovered the painting, sold as a Hornthorst, in fact was the missing Caravaggio. Bridgestock moved to Sotheby's in charge of cataloguing old masters. So where did the painting go? It was given to an old lady. An old lady had it, and she gave it to a priest because she became friendly with him, and the priest eventually brought it over to Dublin, stuck it up over the fireplace, and it left there, stayed there for years. And you know what happened after that? It was picked up. Why am I telling you this? The lost painting is so brilliant that this one here then is the one that I reckon will be the next either or. And it was this wonderful girl. Well, not mine, Caravaggio's. Just before I finish.
Excuse me, Joseph, that will be 400 years' time.
I know. One of the things, just before I finish, I'm just down to this little bit here. I want to tell you why. The most captivating was known as the Calling of Matthew, right? Scene is set in a Roman tavern of the sort that Caravaggio would have gone to, with wooden stools, scarred wooden table, the sunlight from an open door raking across the old stucco wall and settling on the tax collector. We hate those people.
Yes.
They need life. Who would become a saint?
Yes.
Yeah, forgiveness. Debt forgiveness. Anyway, this is nearly finished now. Later, when she began to study art history seriously, Francesca learned that Caravaggio had painted his self-portrait among the figures in the background of the martyrdom of St. Matthew, which he did, and he aged himself considerably, by the way. He had a beard, but he painted himself in quite a lot of them. The Matthew paintings, his first public commissions, brought him fame and wealth, and of course, he was a vagabond painter in Rome at the time, and he was picked up by a famous cardinal called Cardinal Del Monte. If I've read the histories and the stories and have books that side, and Del Monte saved his life really and made him famous by commissioning him to. He went on after that to do paintings such as priceless works of art, such as Paul's conversion on the road to Damascus, is it, and Peter's crucifixion, which hang in the wonderful church of Santa Maria del Popolo in Rome. And I visited them all, and I visited where Artemisia Gentileschi lived, and Orazio Gentileschi. They are wonderful artists that lived during Caravaggio's time, and they painted quite like Caravaggio. But the funny thing was, Hornthurst's painting was accepted as being the original painting, and it was Caravaggio all the time. He also painted another one of those paintings, and it's over in Odessa in Rome, in Russia, and they reckon it's the real painting. The National Gallery above reckon it's the real painting. A bit of useless information about Caravaggio, which I've listed here, is that according to these wonderful experts, Dennis Mahan and people like that, they reckon that there's about 80 authentic paintings in the world of Caravaggio. The others were destroyed in the Second World War. This is about the man we're talking about that I fell in love with as well. And the others simply vanished over the centuries. You couldn't put a price, because they don't come for sale, these Caravaggio. You just couldn't put a price on them. And if you did, I'll give you an example of what it cost at the time when Caravaggio painted The Lost, The Taking of Christ, and then we're nearly finished for unveiling. It cost at the time in Rome to rent a house for a year, if you can bring it back to Roman times, here it is here, it cost 45 scudi, that was the coin of the day, to rent a house in Rome for a year in 1600. The owner, St. John, The Taking of Christ in 1594-64, on January the 2nd, 1603, Sirico paid Caravaggio 125 scudi for a painting with its frame of Christ taken in the garden. Does that put it in context here? He was making a lot of money.